How does a woman who was in the IT field for 22 years end up being honored by the White House for her work in amplifying sober voices? I can tell you it wasn't from some singular spectacular moment, but rather due to the work she now does, fueled by a deep personal passion.
Welcome to the Sober Life Rocks podcast. You may have made the decision not to drink alcohol, or at the very least, not at work-related events. Whether you've never been a drinker, are in recovery, or made a health-related decision, we see you, and you are not alone. In today's world, networking, socializing, and celebrations often happen over drinks, and the struggle can be real. Through this podcast, we're changing that narrative. We're here to create a community where individuals like you, who choose not to drink or drink less, can find camaraderie, support, and practical advice.
Before we dive in, as leaders in the sober space, we pour so much into those that we serve. But who fills us up? That's why we're hosting Amplify Sober Voices, our thought leader conference happening on January 15th, 2026. It's where speakers, writers, podcasters, and changemakers come together to reimagine what a truly inclusive, alcohol-optional world can look like. Head to amplifysobervoices.com to learn more and grab your ticket. We would love to see you there. Welcome back to Sober Life Rocks, where we amplify sober voices from around the world. I'm your host, Margie Schaller, and today I am absolutely thrilled to introduce you all to Carolyn Delaney, the founder and publisher of Journey Magazine, a Maine-based media company dedicated to making recovery from addiction visible and understood. Through compelling storytelling, community engagement, and recovery education, Carolyn is transforming how individuals, employers, and communities perceive and discuss alcohol and recovery. In 2023, Carolyn was honored as the Small Business Person of the Year for Maine by the U.S. Small Business Administration. This prestigious recognition led her to Washington, D.C., where she participated in the National Small Business Week events and had the opportunity to engage with national leaders, including a reception with President Biden. Carolyn's commitment to amplifying recovery voices and fostering community support has made her a prominent figure in the movement to destigmatize addiction. Today, we'll delve into her journey, the impact of Journey Magazine, and how media can play a pivotal role in changing lives. Carolyn, I am so honored to have you here. Thank you.
Thanks, Margie. I'm so excited to be here and just have this conversation about just what can happen when we start a sober life and really expand on that.
So you say start a sober life. That means that you weren't always sober. Are you willing to tell us some of your story about how alcohol has impacted you in your life?
Sure. I'll start. So I started drinking at a very young age, and I didn't really understand or really see that my drinking was any different than anybody else around me. So I didn't really accept that the drinking was a problem. I just didn't know any different. But what happened for me is that I would take a drink and another drink and another drink. I drank alone, and it calmed my insides in a way that I needed calming. And little did I know, starting at such a young age, that became my way to cope. Mm-hmm. And that fueled this like always one more. And I didn't see it as a problem, even through junior high school and high school. It was just a thing that you did. I remember having keg parties and when I was a senior in high school, and I was the one that was buying the kegs because I was the drug dealer in the school. So I had the money and the alcohol. And really what happened for me in those early ages, so this is 16, 17, 18 years old, is that when I started to drink with other people, I felt more comfortable in my own skin. So even though I started drinking alone, when I started drinking with others, teenagers that were drinking, that I felt cool, and I had never felt cool. I was always that loner. I was just always by myself. I never fit in. And by being the person who had the party, I made friends, and I thought that I had kind of arrived. I remember this one time. It was it must have been 1984, and I was having a keg party, and it was a big bonfire, and there's a couple hundred teenagers standing around a big bonfire singing Stairway to Heaven. And I thought, life is never going to get better than this.
Yes.
Like, my life is just, I
Absolutely.
have arrived. I have arrived. And I didn't see it as a problem. And I also barely graduated high school. I skipped all the time. I was dealing drugs in the parking lot. I just didn't know any difference, but I was already blacking out. I was already drinking against my own permission. It was just going to be a couple. I was going to go to the party, and I wasn't going to drink that night because I had a new boyfriend, and I didn't want to make a fool of myself. And guess what? I got drunk. I made a fool of myself. And I didn't see those as red flags. I just didn't see them as like danger, danger, danger. I always thought, I really believed that my blacking out had something to do with somebody put something in my drink. I didn't eat before I went out. I drank too much, whatever, vodka, whatever. Like I was drinking the wrong thing. It became a little game for me, like trying to figure out like how many drinks before a blackout. And my eventual therapist is like, most people don't think like that. How many drinks to a blackout? And I'll drink one under that,
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
under that.
Now, a lot of people would write that all off as just teenage shenanigans. So then
Yeah.
fast forward me into your adulting years and what happened there.
Yeah, so really, really, really quickly, I was drinking every day. I was drinking daily from 18 on. So at 20, I got pregnant and I stopped, and I was going to be a mom. Like I was engaged. We got an apartment. We were going to have a baby. And I think she was probably 3 months old when I went out for a drink with the girls to play pool. And 3 days later, I come to in the back of a biker bar in New Hampshire.
Mm.
No idea what happened. And that I know today it just kicked off a lot, this like tiger in me that I just could not control. And I didn't even know I couldn't control it. I kept trying to I kept trying to I was trying to control drinking. That I just never was able to do that. Never.
Mhm. Mhm.
Pretty quickly that relationship deteriorated. Fast. I mean, I really went down fast. At 23, I was a daily drinker. I was pregnant again, couldn't stop drinking. I was always trying to get my shit together. I was always trying to get my
Mhm.
shit together. And if I hung out with the right people and did the right things with the right neighbors, and it was just never, I was not solving the problem that was really the issue, which
Mhm.
was that I'm an alcoholic. And I didn't understand that because I had so many visuals around me of what real alcoholics look like. And I was not like that. And absolutely, I had that. I definitely had that obsession and compulsion and a total lack of ability to control. And just didn't see it as that until I ended up on the streets of Portland, Maine, and about a year later is when I got into rehab. And thank God I ended up in a neighborhood where people called the cops on me every single day. The cops were called a lot. DHS was called, so Child Human Services got involved because I had two little ones. Um, and I was very, very sick. I was a very sick
Mm.
woman. I was 25 years old. And uh, so DHS got involved, and they said, if you don't go to rehab today, we're picking your kids up at daycare. I mean, it was that dire. And so I had a ride, and I went to rehab. I went to rehab, and this woman I had explored a 12-step. Can we talk?
Yeah.
12-step programs. I'll just say 12-step. And And her name was Jane, and she has since passed away, but she talked the entire ride up, and I was drunk, and she said something like, um, once a cucumber becomes a pickle, it can never be a cucumber again. And I thought the woman was crazy. I thought she was just like she
What
and we
kind of talk
became
is this? Yeah.
like what are you talking about? Yeah. So I went through rehab and they told me, if you go back to doing what you're doing and hanging with who you're hanging with, that chances are really good you're not gonna, stay sober. And I made it about a month and maybe less than a month. And then I picked up a joint and then a drink and then cocaine. And I was just off and running. And but it was different because, we talk about like that belly full of beer and head full of 12 steps. And
Mhm.
I had, even though I was drinking to excess, I was still passing out. I was still blacking out. Every time I came to, there was this little thing inside me that said, you may not have to do this, right? Like there may be a way out. I just didn't think it was for a woman like me. Like I
But the
just didn't
grain of
think it was.
sand of hope was there.
There was definitely something there. There was something there enough so that I came to an AA meetings. I was brought to sober clubs drunk by myself. Like I would come to some of the old timers that have passed away, but they remembered me and they were just so kind
Mm.
and took really good care of me. And eventually I went into a women's halfway house and started. I really had. I couldn't keep going the way I was going. I couldn't. So
Yeah.
that was February 10th, 1993.
And you've been sober ever since.
I've been sober. I've been sober. Technically, my day is the 12th, but yeah. So February 12th, 1993. I've been sober since then, and I also quit smoking January 24th, 2011. And those are two
Wow.
really important days for me because they were, you know, I know some people don't consider the time anything, but for me, it shows like for myself, it shows that I can completely surrender to something that was completely killing me
Mm.
and that that there's this whole other life that I didn't even know was available for me.
Mm.
Didn't even know. So
Thank you. Thank
that's
you
my
for sharing
story.
that. Yeah. So following that, you got into the IT world
I
where
got into the
you,
IT. I got my kiddos back. So I got my kids. I got my kids back. I went to another house called Macaulay Residence and got an apartment, bought a house. I ended up in IT because I started programming before I started drinking. I started programming when I was 10, and and
this was like
it
with an abacus, right?
this was kind of with an abacus.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're kind of showing my age, but
Mine too,
it was
girl.
either
Mine
like
too.
a TRS-80 or a Commodore 64. My
Yeah.
dad was a
Yeah.
VAX VMS programmer when computers were like the size of the post office. They were massive. And yeah, it was just something that always came really easy to me. And yeah, and I made some really fun, like a little hangman and a McDonald's cash register. And I had the kids come from the neighborhood come and yeah. So I started programming very young. And when I got sober, or just before I got sober, my father bought the very first Macintosh that ever hit New England. So
Oh.
this was in like the 80s, like I was still in high school. So it must have been like 87, 88. So he was in that world early on. And then because I could type, he said, if you can figure out how to use this, nobody does. But I was able to teach myself McDraw and some other things while drunk and at one point completely homeless. But it was something that just came really naturally for me. Just came really
Nice.
naturally for me. Yeah. So I got into IT. Printer. I started with a part-time job because I hadn't worked for a while, and I eventually ended up doing programming. And just one beautiful career, scary jump to another. And I in 2001, I think, is when I started leading large IT departments.
Mm.
Started leading in large IT departments, mostly in the call center space.
Nice. So you are no longer in that world. Tell me what happened.
So so let's see. I was in IT leadership until 20, I want to say 2015, 2016 is when I left corporate and I started my own IT consulting business, doing what I had been doing for 30 years. And in 2018, I had a dream about a recovery newsletter that I had been using my Macintosh for in the early 90s. And it was called Journey. So that's where we get our name, Journey. It was a New England journal. And it was put out by a guy in AA that saw a need for the meetings and therapists and just to get the word out of where things were. And it was a newspaper. And so one night I had a dream about that, just like his face and the logo. Like that's all I remember. And then I put it out on Facebook land for old timers, like, how do you remember Journey? And somebody who worked for him had 12 copies of it. And so we had breakfast and I got copies of it. And I didn't know at the time, but it started to plant this little seed for me about the importance of visibility. Because even though people were surviving, people were finding their way to meetings, but in 2018 and 2019, it was awful. It was just awful. All
So,
we saw
yeah.
on the news was overdose deaths, the devastation of active addiction, live and visible everywhere. And I felt like there were these just groups of people that are like reclaiming their lives, right? That nobody was seeing. There wasn't the visibility to the fact that that recovery is possible. And so
Hmm.
that started happening for me. The other thing that started happening for me was I became aware of all the other recovery programs. So I'm a 12-step baby, couple 12-step
Hmm.
programs. I had no idea that there were other recovery programs that are free and for mutual aid, structured, facilitated. I mean, just really really great programs. And I didn't know that until I think early 2018 when I was asked to join a board of a recovery center. And it hurt my heart, honestly, that more people didn't know. So, so a group of us got together and said more people should know this, and we started a print magazine.
I mean, that's just crazy to me. Like going from not even having the ability to manage life to rising in the ranks in IT as a woman in a time when nobody knew anything to now all of a sudden being like, I'm just going to start this little print magazine. Like how, what in your head allowed you to do this?
I don't know if it was honestly in my head as much as it was when I talked about it with others. There was this energy that got created, that other people, even though nobody knew what I did for a living, when I was having breakfast and lunch with people, I didn't know what they did for a living. Some of them didn't do for a living either. And one of my friends said, "You do know I'm an editor, right?" And I had no idea she was an editor, right? Like that. I just didn't know. It just had never come up. And another friend was in the prevention space. And so it was like when I started talking about that dream, people started like showing up and talking about like how important it is to get the hope out, especially in jails and prisons,
Mhm.
because they don't have any access to, recovery or any of the newer education around addiction. They're just so it was like it built momentum. So I started talking about it in October. And then November 1st, we had a meeting and there was 20 of us saying, let's do this. And what can you do, right? You've got 20 people saying, let's do this. And they're following me. I have no idea what I'm doing. And we just did it. We just kept moving. Like it seemed that doors were opening as we were getting to them. Like
You know,
this woman showed up that ran a magazine. And so I hired her to be my consultant for our launch. And somebody else, like I started selling ads and I'd never done ads. And one of my very first advertisers, she's still with us.
aw.
It just gave me like that little bit of, um, uh, fuel to say like, okay, we're going to just keep going. We're just going to keep going. And then of
Laura and
course,
I
COVID.
often, yeah, Laura and I often laugh about that with Sober Life Rocks and now with Amplify. We're literally laying the tracks as the train is coming down them.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah.
at one point, it felt almost like Journey was going to go, like whether I was going to do it or not. Like it was, we had the governor, I was getting called for media. We were getting calls for hundreds of the magazine once we started distributing it. It just like took off. So I felt like I was running behind it,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
trying to learn everything about, the layout and sales and all the things. And I just always had a team of people. I've always had these like really beautiful people around me every single step of the way, every step of the way. I
In my
couldn't quit.
intro,
I couldn't
in my,
quit, right? Like,
in my intro, I said, that this was not any one spectacular moment, and
mm,
yet this is a spectacular success story by a very humble, ordinary woman.
mm, thank you.
How do you personally reconcile all of this momentum and success with who you feel like inside?
Um, that's a really great question.
Mm,
That's a really great question. Because it's shifted. When it first started and we started getting all this publicity and then the award and um, there was this piece of me that I just couldn't understand how I just kept saying yes and things were happening. And um, but recently, when COVID hit, I made a decision. I could either go back to IT, which would have been really easy for me, or I could figure out a way to keep Journey going without being able to print or put down a magazine. So we went to YouTube. Um, but Journey became like this sweet intersection of using my skill set to really make a difference out in communities around a topic that I'm deeply passionate about. I saw that it wasn't just the recovery community. Initially, it was going to be a recovery community magazine. It was going to be just for the recovery community to find each other, find roommates, events, things like that. But what we found is that maybe because of my connections in the CEO space in the business world, uh, we started to attract employers and businesses and allies, people that really understand that there's an issue, but such a delicate topic to step into.
mhm.
I started to gain people and connections that really wanted to help us keep going and keep doing this and bring it into the workplace. So I didn't feel like there was at no point with COVID, there was one point where I made that decision. Like, I'm just
Mhm.
going to
Go or
keep
no
going.
go. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. During COVID, that was my one decision. But what's happened over the last couple of years, especially this last year with Goldman Sachs, so I'm in a Goldman Sachs program, understanding business education, is that it has filled in all of the blank spots I had around Journey being like a thing. It wasn't going to be a thing. It was going to be a project, a weekend project. And next thing I know, I got a thing. And it's really helped me to feel it wholeheartedly. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. My skills, my experience, my expertise in the tech space, that this is that I am uniquely positioned to bring this message to people who are struggling and may not see
Mm,
that there's a path. And I, as a mom, that's not a story we often talk about. As a mom, I know what that feeling is like, so I can talk to
mhm,
her and on a
mhm,
very deep level. And with the uh, all of the education I've done around speaking and art communication, and is that my goal is to equip leaders, to equip people to carry the message of recovery. And I've seen success in that. And that makes me feel like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep standing up when I have an opportunity to do that and work with people. So on the inside, it's gone from really not being able to sleep at night, thinking, what the heck am I doing in this position? I wasn't even visible in my own recovery until I started Journey. People I worked with for decades had no idea I was sober.
Yeah.
And so I went from like, I don't like the term imposter, but I was living a life that I had not intended to be living. And I was doing and showing up in spaces I had no experience showing up in and doing things where I had no experience in doing them. And it's as long as I kept that kind of inner mean girl down and at bay, I just keep showing up. I just keep showing up. And along the way, I'm able to say, okay, what do I need to learn to be the best version of myself that can lead this company to a national media company? What do I need to learn? Who do I need to, who do I meet? How do I continue to grow in a space that I want every state to have an understanding, like, these resources exist. What the problem is that we need people to be able to ask for help. That's the problem. And they're not going to ask for help if it's always about those people, or, the only visibility that people have about addiction is me climbing out of a gutter in 1992, right? If that's their only experience, how can they think any different?
So with that in mind, as you're putting your issues together, how do you select which voices you're going to highlight in your magazine?
So we keep it relatable. So everything we really want, so our editorial strategy is no drama, no trauma, and no triggers, because we know there's enough of that out there. We want someone to pick up the magazine in a coffee shop and be able to read through it and maybe have a little bit better understanding about what recovery looks like, because they see personal recovery stories of somebody who was in jail, or somebody who lost their kids, or a nurse who lost her license, and their life is vastly different. And they're, of course, Elton John is sober, but this is like the person who lives next door to you, right? So these are local people, Mainers, New Hampshire, now a couple outside, but they're everyday people who have gotten their lives back. So we have a whole queue of personal recovery stories. So we pick, I don't know. I'm not sure there's any like rhyme or reason. We try to do like male, female, like at least for the covers. But we also understand that as a publication that's out in community, we have a responsibility to make sure that people are aware of all the recovery programs. So we cover SMART, we cover LifeRing, we cover Al-Anon. We have a storyboard now. So, we have a topic list that we kind of stay aligned to. So we also have editorial partners. So we are able to leverage other people's other subject matter experts' content, like Laura. So we ran one of Laura's, right, from her book. Like, we get to like lift that up and promote it out. So we get to amplify voices in the space that may not reach an audience like ours. So I guess I didn't really answer your question, except to say, I don't know. We don't really have any rhyme or reason behind it, except for topics. And of course, September.
What I heard is the idea of the every person experience.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to have you on here, because you're the everyday person. I'm the everyday person. Like, I've talked to some celebrities, I've talked to some, sports stars, but it's the everyday person who I stayed secretly sober in my professional life for 18 and a half years. None of those people knew what I had been through and what I was still going through, trying to navigate life sober in a world that was fueled by alcohol as the only point of connection. So
Right.
I feel like those are the stories that matter more, because the reactions I got from people who had known me all those years was like, "Oh, I didn't know you had had a problem." Because I was very, very secretive about my drinking so that people wouldn't see that I had this problem. I liked drinking better at home as well, because that way nobody would see that I passed out at the end of the night. Um,
Right.
so I think it's vital that the everyday public gets to know that their next door neighbor, their soccer colleague, soccer mom colleagues, their little league baseball colleagues are just suffering, whether it's
Mhm.
suffering with their addiction or suffering even in sobriety
Right.
because of
Right.
the
Well,
stigma.
a big part, and that's exactly what so Journey's evolution has really shifted to being more educational for the public, the general public,
Mhm.
because we we we've been we're able to see, I'm able to see that businesses and employers and leaders all over our state, they really want to help and they really want to understand. They want to understand how not to hurt somebody, how to approach someone that may be struggling, how not to be an asshole, right? Like, and 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 it's a very tender uh situation to navigate
Mhm.
if all you're aware of is the visibility of the devastation of active addiction, that you can't, it's just hard. And we've done, I don't even know how many events now, over 400 events out in communities. So we bring our magazine and Narcan and doTERRA bags out into communities. So we've been to the Blueberry Festival and music festivals and farmers markets, and we have a conversation about addiction and recovery in a way that's really accessible and approachable. And we leave people with bags of information, and in a way that they can go and bring it home,
Mhm.
and read it in the privacy of their own house. But we want people to see what recovery looks like. And the
Mhm.
only way to get our magazine, the way that we see, the way that we've been successful, is to put the magazine in the waiting rooms, bring it out to the farmer's market, bring it out. It
Mhm.
shouldn't be something that's talked about only at the therapist office.
Yeah.
It should be more, if the more we talk about it. And I think that, thank God, there are other recovery programs besides the 12 steps. I have the most respect for 12 step community. Those are my people. And I respect the traditions almost to a point where I'm asinine about it. So I respect them. And just because a person is in recovery does not mean that they're a member of an anonymous fellowship. And that
That's right.
has really, really opened up the opportunity for people to be in recovery and sober and not break a tradition of a program that saved their life. So
Yeah.
I really, I think that it's an opportune time for those of us that can talk about being in recovery to be really visible to our friends and our family members and our neighbors, and because it 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 can encourage a conversation. It
Mhm.
can encourage a conversation. And so we built a course called Recovery Basics. And we it's a 30-minute course. It's free, in collaboration with the Harold Alfon Workforce Center, which is part of our main community college system here. We had reps from LL Bean, United Way, some HR professionals, a couple large trade associations help us to create this 30-minute digital course where we talk a little bit about addiction, we talk about why people don't ask for help, and we talk a lot about the recovery resources that are available.
Mm.
And then we have some messages for like family members and coworkers. And because what we kept
Beautiful.
hearing out in public is, I know it's a problem, I don't know what I can do.
Yeah.
And the message to them is always educate yourself, educate yourself.
Yeah.
Um, so I
Well,
think that
Carolyn,
that's
I have three
been
last questions for
exciting.
you.
Okay, good.
Question number one is I just have to ask, what was the moment like going to DC, being honored, and getting to go to the White House? What was that like?
I felt like I was in a fairy tale, right? Like a woman like me ending up in a place like that. Um, First, I cried for 3 days when I got the notice. When I got the phone call that said that I had won, I cried for 3 days.
Sweet.
And then in DC, it was a learning experience. So I won the 2023 Small Business Person of the Year for the state of Maine. And this conversation in the for-profit business community is unheard of. It's
Mhm.
unheard of. So I was in rooms with, service providers, utility providers, all the gamut of barbecues, like the coffee shops. Like I was in with not recovery, not addiction type of businesses. And so at one point um, during one of the receptions where somebody asked me what I did and I said it, they just like made a joke about the woman that was drinking right next to that. Like it just became this, I just learned
Mhm.
a lot about like how uncomfortable people get around me. Right,
Mhm.
as they're drinking. So that was interesting. But when we got notice that we were going to the White House, I cried again because I'm kind of a sensitive girl. And I just couldn't believe it. We went to the Rose Garden. And then
Yeah.
so it was Biden, it was VP Harris, and the winner of the national for the year before. So we had
Mm.
speakers, and they came down. The president on one side, VP on the other side. So I got in this line. My husband got in that line, and when I got up to her, I asked if I could give her my bracelet. So we have these bracelets. I don't know if you can see it, but it says Amplify Hope.
Amplify hope.
Yeah, so this is our signature bracelet from our launch party in 2019. And so I said, "Can I give you this bracelet?" And so it's her, Secret Service, me. And she said, "Amplify Hope." I love that. And she hugged me and I went, "Not touching her, not touching her." She was a little scared. And and then one of her people shot a picture of the two of us together. And it was just such a magical moment of not just for me personally, but for this conversation
Yeah.
to have that kind of visibility and I also have been part of the recovery friendly workplace movement. So I helped with
Mhm.
a model law for the states. I was active in that community for a long, long time. So I was working on the model law when I was in DC. So that was from an executive agency of the White House called
Yeah.
LAPA. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so just the opportunity to be able to bring this conversation into a national, you know, we're not talking about nonprofits and social services. We're talking about people who actually can influence other people. So the
Yeah.
more people that talk about it, even as allies, they can just influence so many people. So yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
asking. It always felt a little bit like a fairy tale, but I have
Yeah.
pictures to prove it wasn't a dream.
So, question number two is, do you have visions of expanding your focus area from Maine to other areas?
Yes, great question. So we're in Maine and New Hampshire, and we're working our way. So we've shifted our editorial so that it's more general and less Maine focused. Our first 5 years, I think it was all Maine,
Mhm.
and the last couple of years we've started to shift it more general, so that we could be a more geographically spread. So we'll be officially launching in New Hampshire, I would say early, like maybe fourth quarter. Like we're working on
Congratulations.
anchor sponsors. Thank you. And they've been asking us to come down for a very long time. And there's a lot of recovery friendly workplaces down there. They've done the
Mhm.
work and we want them to be visible to other people. So yeah, so I'm excited about that. But we're also doing a lot online too. So the website's getting a little bit of an overhaul, a simpler version. we really want to start to highlight speakers in the space, people who write books, right? There's some amazing books out there. Writing the book is one thing, marketing the book is another, right? Like, so we want to be able to
1,000%.
help in that avenue to introduce people who are journey readers. We get quite a bit of traffic on our website, so that they can get to know other people that are writing books and speakers in the space, and become familiar. I'm always asked, what are your favorite podcasts? What are your favorite video, YouTube channels? What's your favorite book? Like, so I thought, what a great way to use our platform to help other people who are talking about this conversation. So that's another way that we're growing. And then the third way we're growing is we're working on a product right now for employers.
Beautiful.
For employers, to keep the conversation going internally. How do you shift culture in a way that is low risk and yet very visible, that you want your people to ask for help? Yeah, so we're working on that now. So those are our big moves.
That's amazing, amazing. I can't wait to see. So last question, Carolyn. You were really vulnerable and shared some of the challenges that you had with your kids when they were younger. How do they feel about what they see you doing today?
I have the greatest kids in the world, really. They're proud of me. They're very proud of me. And I think that I think the message I want them to have is that our past doesn't have to define our future, and that any point in our life we're able to rewrite the next chapter, and that we can write the next chapter in a way that feels aligned with who we are. Just because I was, an IT director 10 years ago, that doesn't mean that I'm destined to live that life forever. That at any point in my lifetime, I can continue to shift as it feels right. And so I get to see my kids frequently. We have family game days, and I saw my son yesterday. So they help. My husband, my daughter, and my son help with distribution and other things to do with the magazine. But yeah, they're pretty proud. Pretty proud.
As well they should be. Is there any final thoughts that you would like to share that I haven't asked you about?
I think for your community to, I just invite them to have conversations with people that may need to know that there are resources available, and that somebody needs to hear that there's hope. Somebody needs to hear them say that there's hope, and that recovery is possible, and that it's not a doom and gloom thing, right? Like it rocks, right? Like that it's not, oh, we stop at whatever that thing is, and now we've got this life that's miserable. It's that it's a life you can't even imagine. So yeah.
Yay, I love that. Well, for anybody listening who is inspired by this conversation, please check out journeymagazine.com. There's a lot you can see online, and connect with you on LinkedIn, right? And all the things. So
yeah. LinkedIn is my best place to find me is LinkedIn.
Awesome. So if today's conversation lit up something inside of you, I first and foremost want to invite you to follow that passion, to have your voice, whether it is just within your community, your work community, or if you would like to become a podcaster or a speaker or writer. Like, the more we can all talk about these things, the more we're normalizing it, the more that we're showing that just because alcohol has done its damage doesn't mean that we are damaged. And if today you think you know somebody else who needs to hear this message, please hit subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode. It would mean the world to me. And don't forget, tickets are now on sale for Amplify Sober Voices, our live event happening January 15th in Orlando. If you're craving community with people like us, inspiration, and real conversations, this is the room to be in. You can get all the details at amplifysobervoices.com. Till next time, keep showing up, stay bold, and remember, sober life rocks because you rock. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you.